Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes. Okay, so before we start this, I'd definitely be interested to figure out, to hear what he has to say about that, because I do think Yu-Gi-Oh packs have a lot of similarities to loot boxes. Loot boxes have a variety of items with varying rarities. They have chase items, items that you want to get from these loot boxes, right? Now, loot boxes typically are only distributing cosmetic items, items that don't really affect gameplay, right? That is, usually if we're looking at like the direct comparison here, what he's pointing out as Overwatch, Overwatch only puts cosmetic items in loot boxes, and that goes the same way for many other games. Now, that's where the only difference is that I can really see with regards to Yu-Gi-Oh! In that Yu-Gi-Oh! The prizes, the chase items, the items that you're getting in general directly affect gameplay. And I kind of want to say that's like worse. I kind of want to say that's worse. I mean, it's pay to win, right? I mean, we play card games. We know what it is. We know what we're getting ourselves into. It's pay to win. That's okay. That's something that's majority is it's agreed upon. That's like how card games are, right? We're not really going to change fundamentally how card games are, like the business model for card games. We're just not going to do that, right? There are other card games that don't work like this. There are other card games that don't work like this. One card game I could think about is Netrunner. Netrunner is not a trading card game, but it is a living card game, or I think it's also considered a collectible card game. And a collectible card game, a living card game, essentially what it is you buy the initial box, and whatever cards you want to buy next, they all come, and all copies come from these data packs, these different card packs, right? So Blood and Water, whatever these card packs are, right? They have all copies of every type of card within that card pack, right? These card packs. So everyone has equal access, essentially. As long as you're spending the $15 for these expansion packs, pretty much, you have all the cards available. Doesn't matter. There's no rarities. There's nothing like that. So there are other card game products that are like that. There are. Surprise, surprise, they don't really do that well. They don't really do that well monetarily, right? And it's because, with regards to like gacha, loot boxes, Yu-Gi-Oh, the potential for money, the potential for gains is extremely fucking high. It's really, really good because people are going to keep buying packs if they don't get their chase item, right? And there are just a very few limited amounts of those chase items. So I don't really find a lot of differences between loot boxes and Yu-Gi-Oh card packs. I'd be interested to see what he thinks are the differences, what is essentially like where the differences are, essentially, right? So I'd be really interested to see, because to me there's not that much difference, and the morality of it, whether it's right or wrong, whether it should continue or not, at this point I don't think it really matters, especially as a card game player. I don't really think it matters that much. I feel like it is something that we all have to sort of deal with as a card game player. I don't think there's that much else to talk about with regards to that. I do think Master Duel is a very good step in the right direction in terms of being more consumer friendly, because it essentially kind of works similar to Overwatch. And I'm not talking about Overwatch now, but I'm talking about Overwatch when it had loot boxes, right? It kind of works similarly to Overwatch in that you can earn your loot boxes. And in Master Duel, you can earn your card packs very, very easily too. So I do think Master Duel is a very good direction, a very good step in the direction of being more consumer friendly, of making card games be more consumer friendly while still retaining some of that, the monetizability, you know what I mean? And also just being, a good success, right? and still, I guess, utilizing that gambling mechanic. Whether it's moral or not, I don't like. I think it's very obvious. It's very immoral, but it doesn't really matter, at least to me, because I still enjoy it anyway, right? So yeah. But yeah, let's take a look.
All right, y'all. So I've been reading a lot of comments lately, and a lot of it came from like the hot takes video. But I'm kind of getting sick of this one comparison, and I mean, some of you guys might already know where I'm going with this, but booster packs are not loot boxes,
Okay.
and like the title says. But even if they were loot boxes, that actually isn't so bad, or at least not as bad.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. No, I agree with that, but I don't agree that it's like, oh, well, even if they were, okay. But okay. But I definitely want to hear why you think they're not loot boxes.
As the alternative. So, my hot take has been that booster packs are fine the way that they are because it's not illegal gambling, at least not in my opinion.
Well, of course it's not illegal. If it was illegal, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be done. It exists. It exists within a very like gray area, right? It's not gambling. You're not gonna lose your life over this. You're not going to destroy your life savings or like you're not hoping to win the lotto, right? At the end of the day, you're still the but it's a loophole. It's a loophole. Like, yeah, with a card pack, you're buying a product. You're still getting an item no matter what. But the value of that item can be essentially in the pennies, right? And a lot of the times it is. And when there is a huge disparity between what you commonly get, which are pennies, and what you could hope to get, which could be in the hundreds of dollars figure, I think it's pretty much gambling. It is pretty much gambling. There's not that much difference. It's not like super egregious. It's not like dangerous in terms of like being able to harm your way of living, but it's still gambling.
But, well, that's my hot take. But first, let me break down my point. So,
Okay.
booster packs are not loot boxes.
Okay.
Loot boxes were popularized in like Overwatch and whatever the other games had loot boxes. I know all about Overwatch loot boxes because I played that game. And the major difference between a loot box, like an Overwatch one, and a booster pack like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon,
Okay.
in a loot box, you get a randomized thing. There's some set chance to get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But like we all know, you don't always get what you want. You have a low chance of getting it.
Yeah.
But when you open a loot box, the things you get inside, they have no monetary value. They're non-transferable. They're not tradable. They don't actually help you get what it is that you want.
Okay. And I would say that the majority of what you open in packs, the overwhelming majority of what you open in packs, will also not really help you get what you want either. Because you're going to trade those cards in for pennies. And those pennies are, well, like, how many packs are you going to buy for you to earn enough pennies to buy your chase item, right? Realistically, you're not really doing that. You're still just going to buy your packs to try and get your ultra rare, your ultimate rare card.
However, a booster pack, like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster pack or anything, every single card in a booster pack has a market value.
Okay.
Or at least it has a perceived value. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a trading card game. When Yu-Gi-Oh! Was kind of created, we were supposed to open up booster packs, and then we traded our cards around so we could build the decks that we wanted.
Yeah.
That model was fine for the beginning of card games until we got into, meta games. And you could argue that Konami knew that this is how this would go, since Magic the Gathering exists, Pokemon exists, Like, card games have been relatively the same way since 1992. But because of metagames, that meant that certain cards were desired by way more people than copies of the card that could exist. So if 7 people are all trying to trade for the same card, that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you're trading cards, you can't always match up with the person who has the card that you want. Like, let's say I have a what's a Yu-Gi-Oh card? Let's just say I have a Zeus, right? I got double A
Yeah.
Zeus. And 3 people in my shop want this Zeus. I don't need it. The problem is, I actually don't need anything. I'm not looking for any cards. But I don't need the Zeus. Well, that's where money comes in. That's where having a value for the card comes in.
Well, yeah.
So even though I can't make a trade for the Zeus, I can still name my price, and that whole thing created our secondary market. So Zeus is an expensive example, but literally every single card you find in a booster pack has a market value, whether it's
Yes, they do. But let me ask you a question, right? If something is worth zero pennies, right? $0, does it have market value? Probably you would say no. There's no value in 0. Okay. Well, then if something is worth a penny, 5 cents, 10 cents, 13 cents even, would you say, does it have market value? Yes, obviously it does, right? But it's not that much more than 0, right? It's not really that much more.
1 cent or $100. That means that technically, every time you open a booster pack, you are actually accruing value towards the value of whatever the card is that you wanted.
I mean, in a way, sure, but again, you have about as much value there as you have by I don't know, like recycling a can. You know? You have about as much value there as recycling a can on average. Recycling like a garbage, like a bag full of cans. You know, it's not that much. It really isn't that much. The cards, yes, inherently they have value, but if it's not that much more than 0, it's not really that much, it's not really worth talking about. What truly matters is that cards inherently have values. Digital items and loot boxes don't have any. Yeah, digital items and loot boxes have 0 value, right? Unless you're talking about CSGO. But let's just talk about Overwatch. Okay, well, you have 0 value items in a loot box. But what I'm saying is, well, in Yu-Gi-Oh, sure, they're not 0. But it's pretty close to 0. It's pretty close to 0. And on top of that, yeah, there is a secondary market for game accounts with certain items in it. For sure there is. It's not as liquid as cards, for sure. Physical items. But there is a secondary market value for certain items in online games too. Besides CSGO. Doesn't work like that because no stores are buying cards that aren't $2 or more since stores buy at a 50% hit. So unless you resell, you're not getting back money for your bulk. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, you're not real. That's what I'm saying. It's practically speaking, your cards are worthless. Because you have to open so many in order to even get $1 out of them. You know? You really do. It's not that much more than 0.
It wasn't a thing in Overwatch, at least not to that degree. Overwatch had their currency that you could get in some of your loot boxes, yada yada yada. The main the main issue that I think a lot of people have, when they say loot box, they immediately get angry and they remember how awful loot boxes were. But I've been playing this game, or I'm not playing it anymore. But I was playing Overwatch 2 all last year, or at least when it released up until like January of this year. I was playing Overwatch 2, and I saw what happened when you remove loot boxes from a game. That lets the company become a price setter. And by price setter, I mean, imagine if Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't have a secondary market. Instead, Konami just sold you the cards directly. But Konami gets to decide how much the cards are worth. We already don't trust Konami to do most things. We barely trust Konami to make a ban list. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying a lot of players, they don't really like the way Konami handles their ban lists.
Okay.
Would you trust Konami to set a monetary value for every single card in this game?
I don't see I'm not too sure where we're going with that. I'm not... Okay.
Remember, this is a corporation whose job is to make profits. I promise you, it would not be a fair shake.
Yeah.
What we have currently in Yu-Gi-Oh! And pretty much every TCG, we have a secondary market that is run by supply and demand, where prices are going to get as low as the market dictates. Konami and whoever other governing bodies in card games, their hands are off of that. That's really run by us, the community. Okay. We can decide to buy cards or we can choose not to. But at least we have the choice. If we didn't have booster packs and Konami just got to control the actual price of every single card, we wouldn't have choice anymore. Then there'd be no freedom. It just wouldn't...
That's un-American.
It wouldn't be a fun time. Well, for some. And I think that's where this conversation gets a little more interesting. I think a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players who hate booster packs, who hate loot boxes, who are always commenting about how Yu-Gi-Oh should do away with the booster pack system, I think a lot of those are more competitive-minded players.
Yeah, no, I don't really think there's a lot of point in, discussing doing away with the booster boxes. Because, even Magic doesn't do away with booster boxes. There's no getting rid of booster boxes. It just isn't a thing, right? There is an alternative. There is an alternative. If you don't support Magic, if you don't support Pokemon, you don't support Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't support trading card games and booster packs as a business model, there are alternatives. There is, again, Netrunner, living card games, collectible card games. They do exist. If booster packs were against the law, then, and obviously egregious price setting like what he's suggesting would be the alternative, right? Then the only way you would have a game the only way you would have a card game is in the same vein as Netrunner, right? Living card game, which I think would be better for the consumer. There's just no way though that we're going to have an alternative in the actual real world, right? Booster packs have always been a thing. It's the business model of this trading card game, of Pokemon, of Magic. It's not going to go away. It doesn't change, though, that booster packs are loot boxes. Booster packs are loot boxes. Loot boxes were modeled after booster packs, and it does prey upon the same points in our brain that are wired to think about gambling, right? It's gambling.
Because there is something to be said when you just want to compete, you just need to get the cards, and you don't really care how you get them or the price. When you're a more competitive-minded player, you're a bit more flexible on price of cards because you're playing to win, and so you're not worried too much about the prices as compared to someone who's more casually minded, who operates on an extremely fixed budget, who can't like wrap their head around buying like meta staple cards when they're relevant because, well, they really don't need them like that. So I do think that this conversation kind of runs into a bit of the casual competitive divide. Because, yeah, I get it. Competitive players just want to get their hands on cards fast. They want to get them easily, and they just want to get to competing as as conveniently as possible. More casual players, they care more about how they get the cards. And if we had a system where Konami just directly sold us cards, or they sold like box sets of just every card in a set, I think competitive players would have no problem investing in those cards because they will, they're going to get the job done. But for people on a fixed income, I just don't think that'll work out. With booster packs, the secondary market lets prices go up and down. It ebbs and flows. Prices can get driven down through reprints and everything else.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if we'd have reprints if we didn't have booster packs. And if there's no reprints, then prices would just stay at whatever Konami says they are.
Yeah, I'm not really too interested in entertaining this this fantasy of, Konami setting the prices of every card and us not having booster packs. I don't like. So essentially, Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes because the alternative is worse. That's not really an argument that Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes. You're just saying it's a declarative statement that is totally separate and saying that, oh, well, the alternative to loot boxes or the alternative to Yu-Gi-Oh packs is way worse. Well, that's not necessarily saying it's not loot boxes, though, right? You're just saying that the alternative is worse, which I don't really necessarily agree with. There are other alternatives than just Konami being a price setter for individual cards.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm just not down with that. I'm not that big of a Konami hater, but I sure as hell wouldn't trust Konami to tell me what every single card in this game is worth. That'll probably be the end of the game for me. But anyway, those are just my thoughts about booster packs and loot boxes, and how even if booster packs are loot boxes, it's really not that bad. Or
Yeah.
at least better than.
No. There you go. Yeah, it's not that bad. Or rather, we accept it. We've accepted it since 1993. It's been a thing. It's been a thing since 1993. We're not getting rid of loot boxes. We're not getting rid of Yu-Gi-Oh packs, right? It's just not going to be a thing. Unless the law suddenly learns how the internet works and how these things work and actually wants to fix these things, they're just not. There's no fixing them. Capitalism is capitalism. Corporate greed is, this business model works, so it's gonna do its thing. And it's gambling. It just is.
The alternative. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.
Yeah, okay. I feel like this video was all over the place. I do appreciate that, he's sharing his thoughts, though, right? In a public forum, in a public setting. I don't agree that Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes. I don't think he put up a lot of good arguments that Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes, but I do appreciate Alec sharing his thoughts and opinions about it. But I don't know. What are you guys saying? Because I definitely want to hear what you guys are saying about it. Better solution for the lower budget players to do what OCG does with their rarities. I don't really care about like the solution. I really don't care about talking about the solution. When we're not talking about our alternatives to loot boxes, we're not talking about alternatives to Yu-Gi-Oh packs. The thing is, it is what it is. It'll never change. I don't really care about talking about the alternatives to it. Because there are alternatives, it just doesn't make enough money, and so the only way you would see a reality of Yu-Gi-Oh being like a living card game, or Magic being like a living card game where you can buy these packs and they have all the copies and there are no rarities, right? The only way that happens is if the law forbade this type of monetization, this business model. And that's just never going to happen. So, I don't really care. Once again, Yu-Gi-Oh isn't exactly the same as loot boxes. It is a form of gambling, yes, but that is the only similarity it shares with loot boxes. Outside of that, it's a vastly different idea. Okay, but how is it a different idea? How is it a different idea? What is the difference? Neither, like, I haven't heard anything from you yet, and Alec for sure hasn't put up anything that has convinced me how they're not loot boxes. Like, I'm pretty sure his points were the alternative sucks, which, sure, that alternative sucks, but there are other alternatives to even that alternative. Oh, so Alec's point is that no matter what, if you buy a booster pack, you are still accruing value. You are still going positive, no matter what, because everything you buy, everything you open from a booster pack still has monetary value. And yes, that's technically true. And that's how the loophole works, right? That's technically true. That's how it works. But again, my question to you is, would you say something that has zero value, that is worth $0, does that have any value? Obviously, no. There's no monetary value. Okay, well then, how much is something that is worth a penny, a nickel, a dime, 13 cents? How much value is that? Well, it's just that. It's 13 cents. And it's not that much more than zero. It really isn't that much more than zero. Right? You also have to find a vendor to sell it to. You have to find people to sell it to that are able to buy it in bulk. And generally speaking, that card that is worth maybe 7 cents to a player, if you can't find that player, you're gonna have to sell to a vendor, and guess what? It's worth 3.5 cents instead. And you'll have to sell in bulk. You have to sell in a big stack to the vendor. The vendor will buy it for, you know, a couple dollars. Cards inherently have a physical presence. As long as you take care of them, they can and will exist forever. They inherently have some form of value. You can trade with them. But you could trade digital items too. You could trade digital goods. CSGO, you could trade items, right? You can trade immense amounts of money with them, right? You could also sell your accounts, right? There is a secondary market even for those things. It's not really as liquid. It's not as approachable, but it is still a thing, you know? In the advanced format where optimization is a requirement, rarity is only cosmetic, the cards still hold inherent value due to its function in the game. You can even hand them to other people. You can buy and sell them through a secondary market. But most of what you're buying though, Gabe, right, is bulk. Most of what you're getting from these packs, the overwhelming majority of what you're opening from these booster packs is junk. They are not worth anything. They are literally worth, they're pretty much worth zero until you can find someone to sell it to, right? Their practical worth is zero until you're able to accrue enough, unless you have like 100 cards that are worth a penny and you're willing to sell it to a vendor and they're going to give you maybe $1 for it. My only counter to the counter argument is the fact that there is a guaranteed product in place, but everything else in concept is very similar to loot boxes. I mean, there's a guaranteed product in loot boxes too. You get this digital good. You get some digital good. They're just of low rarity that are worthless, that are things that you don't want, right? It's the same thing. It really is very, very much the same thing. Majority of what you're getting in a loot box are things that you don't want. Majority of what you're getting in booster packs are things that you don't want, that have no value, right? That have practically no value. It's not absolutely zero value, but it's practically zero value. There's not that much of a difference between 10 cents and zero. Not a significant amount. Hard to disagree with APS. Packs are by definition loot box, a box containing a prize of unknown value. You don't know what the value is until you open the pack. It could be anything. Yep. And majority case is that it's worth close to 0. For me, the thing is whether or not, listen, I'll make it very simple. Are Yu-Gi-Oh packs like loot boxes? Are Yu-Gi-Oh packs loot boxes? The only way you could disagree with this is if you think close to 0 is significantly different from 0, then no, they are not loot boxes. Otherwise, yes. And the key word here is significantly. Significantly. If you don't think there is a significant difference, then they are loot boxes for all intents and purposes. The only argument, why is this the case? Why is this the case? Because the argument against loot boxes, against Yu-Gi-Oh packs equals loot boxes, right? The argument against that is Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes because you are always opening something of monetary value. You're always obtaining something of monetary value, right? That is the core argument that loot boxes are, that Yu-Gi-Oh packs are not loot boxes, right? This is the core argument. But that's why this is essentially saying that, well, you pretty much aren't opening something of monetary value. You're not really opening something of monetary value. For the majority case, you're not really doing that, right? Most of the time, it is 0. Still gambling. You're still trying to open certain things. And that's why I don't buy paper. Like, I don't interact with the TCG whatsoever because it's way too expensive to open the packs, and it's also way too expensive to participate in the secondary market. It's really expensive to play Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't interact with it. The alternative that, you know, that Alec is talking about, there's even one more other alternative than this. The other alternative is Master Duel. Alternatives to Yu-Gi-Oh packs. Living card game. See Netrunner. Master Duel. Well, not really, right? Not really. If we're talking about paper, it's living card game. What is the goal of opening Yu-Gi-Oh packs? Right? What is the goal? The goal of opening Yu-Gi-Oh packs is to open rare cards that you want. This is the goal. The goal of opening Yu-Gi-Oh packs is to open rare cards that you want. The reality of what happens is most of the time you are not opening that. But you're still buying packs in the hopes of getting those rare cards, and thus you're gambling. You're gambling. You're spending money, and you're typically winning $0. You're winning 0 monetary value. You're winning 0 sentimental value. You're winning 0 perceived value most of the time, until that one time you do open the rare card and you finally, you know, everything is worth it. It's gambling. It's, for all intents and purposes, it's similar enough to loot boxes in all the ways that matter. The argument, we're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh packs and the similarities between it and loot boxes, right? And you guys are picking out details that, yeah, technically they're true. But for everything that we're talking about with regards to loot boxes, in terms of like the anger behind it or what is wrong about loot boxes, right? Like, what is wrong about loot boxes, right? It is gambling, right? They prey upon consumers, upon gambler fallacy, right? It is gambling. It is predatory. What else is it? It's pretty much that. That's pretty much what it is, right? What is wrong about loot boxes? It is gambling and it's predatory. And what I'm saying is, this is the same to Yu-Gi-Oh packs. It just is. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You could say Yu-Gi-Oh packs have all the same problems. It doesn't matter that you're going to be able to retain the physical... Who cares if I can retain the physical items of my bulk common? Games like Magic the Gathering have functionality for bulk commons as the draft card, so the problem isn't as prominent. They have some semblance of reasons to justify. Yeah, that is one really cool thing about Magic the Gathering, is that you can have a game based off the rarities. You can't have that with Yu-Gi-Oh because Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't give a fuck about other alternate game modes. Are Yu-Gi-Oh packs and loot boxes technically the same? No. Simply because digital versus physical. But in all the ways, in practically all the ways we talk about loot boxes, in the context of, is it moral, right? Is this predatory? Is this gambling, right? In these contexts, they are the same. This is generally what I'm talking about. This is like the main point, okay? Yeah, digital goods, they can go away forever, whatever. Physical goods, yes, you could keep them, you could preserve them, whatever. Who cares, right? Loot boxes and Yu-Gi-Oh packs, they're not technically the same in this context. But in the ways that we talk about loot boxes, in the context of, is it moral, is it predatory, is it gambling, is it right to be angry at this? You know, right? When Alec was talking about the anger behind loot boxes, you know, should it change? Should there be consumer protection against this? Is the law just too stupid to understand this in order to regulate it? It's the same thing. Right? It's the same thing. I agree with that, strongly agree. And the fact that it applies to Yu-Gi-Oh packs is proof that Yu-Gi-Oh packs themselves fall under the same category as loot boxes. They are practically one and the same. Yes, and what matters is like the context and what we're talking about. Are we actually talking about, like, when Alec is talking about, are Yu-Gi-Oh packs the same as loot boxes, do you really think he's talking about like whether or not they're physical versus digital, whether or not you have something like something or nothing, right? No, we're talking about, is it gambling? Is it moral? Is this right? Is this something that, you know, are we being preyed upon, right? Is this taking advantage of people, of the things in our brain where it's wired such that we enjoy this? We enjoy gacha, we enjoy gambling. Of course it is. In these contexts, they are the same. They are meant to get you to buy more, because you're not going to open what you get, what you want. Literally, they aren't. Fundamentally, they are. Yeah. This probably stems from a cultural difference as well, where in Japan, these kind of loot box elements are common in a lot of day-to-day stuff. They constantly have raffles for everything and normalize. Yep, they do. And it's, I mean, it's all, it all like depends on like the severity, or like in terms of like how deep you can go, how deep in the hole you can go, for sure. And I definitely think there are like safe forms of gambling, or rather practically harmless forms of gambling. I do think that, but at the same time, it's still like, it's still gambling, it's still predatory, it's still meant to, you know, get you to buy things of zero value. It's kind of a scam, you know. The idea is to get you to buy things of zero value. It's why Netrunner doesn't do very well, because everything you get in Netrunner is what it is, you know. And why this game doesn't do well, this business model doesn't really do well, is because you're basically getting people, you're scamming people. You're getting people to buy things of zero value. How can I get you to buy junk? How can I get you to buy bulk? How can I get you to buy things that are worth nothing? The only way I could get you to buy it is if I put it in a neat little shiny pack. Ooh, what's inside? What's inside? You never know. You never know. You never know what's inside this little funny little booster pack. That's the only way I can sell you junk. And that's why this business model works. That's why it's, for all intents and purposes, similar to loot boxes. It's the same, right? It is what it is. I'm tired of people claiming that they're literally one and the same. When it comes to the topic of gambling, yes, Yu-Gi-Oh! And loot boxes are the same idea. But like, yes. I understand, like, in a literal sense, you're correct. But I feel like a lot of people are willfully dodging what people are trying to say. What we have to do when we're operating like in this form of discourse, what we ought to do when we're interacting with this form of discourse, when we're interacting with other ideas, is what you would like to do is give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Try to understand their position. Try to understand what they are talking about. If someone is saying Yu-Gi-Oh! Packs are like loot boxes, what are they actually saying? Are they really talking about the difference between physical and digital goods? Probably not. I think the actual context, the actual message behind what they're saying is regarding the gambling aspect, right? That is what we're trying to say. And that's what is called being charitable. It's called giving someone the benefit of the doubt, is trying to understand their positioning, trying to understand like what they are actually trying to say, instead of hyper focusing on the other details that we're not really trying to talk about, right? But I mean, for sure, I can definitely understand the confusion, but this is definitely what we're trying to talk about, right? This is what we're trying to talk about. So yeah, definitely a fun video, a fun note to leave it off on. I definitely think Yu-Gi-Oh! Packs are similar to loot boxes in all aspects of gambling, and I do think they are forms of gambling. I hard believe that. If you think otherwise, I definitely would like to know. Let me know in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe, and yeah. See you on the next one.